What happens when Hollywood's most laid-back star completely loses his cool on live television? When Jason Momoa, the man who made Aquaman a household name, found himself in the middle of a heated argument so intense that security had to escort him off the Kelly Clarkson show. This isn't just another celebrity meltdown. This is the story of how a simple interview question sparked a confrontation that left viewers speechless and the entertainment world buzzing for weeks. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts on celebrity interviews gone wrong. Now, let's get into what really happened when these two powerhouse personalities clashed on live television. The Kelly Clarkson show was running like clockwork that afternoon. Kelly, dressed in a vibrant purple blazer, was in her element, chatting with the audience during the commercial break. Her infectious energy filled the studio as she prepared for her next guest. Jason Momoa had been making the rounds promoting his latest project, and his appearance on Kelly's show was supposed to be just another friendly stop on the publicity tour. And we're back in 3, 2, 1. The floor director signaled as the cameras rolled. Kelly's smile beamed across the studio as she turned to face her guest. Welcome back to the Kelly Clarkson Show. I'm here with the incredibly talented Jason Momoa. Jason, thank you so much for being here today. Momoa, sporting his signature long hair and a casual black t-shirt, leaned back in his chair with that familiar, easygoing grin. Thanks for having me, Kelly. Always a pleasure. So let's talk about your latest project, Kelly began, her voice carrying that warm, conversational tone that made her show so popular. You've been branching out into some really interesting territory lately, but I have to ask, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, there's been some talk in the industry about your approach to certain roles. Momoa's expression shifted slightly, his eyebrows raising with curiosity. What kind of talk? Kelly glanced down at her notes, then back up with a professional smile. Well, some critics have suggested that you tend to rely heavily on your physical presence rather than really diving deep into the emotional complexity of your characters. I mean, you're obviously incredibly charismatic and you have this amazing screen presence. But do you ever feel like you're being typecast? The question hung in the air for a moment. Momoa's relaxed posture stiffened just slightly, and there was a flicker of something, annoyance perhaps, that crossed his features. I'm sorry, what exactly are you trying to say here? Momoa asked, his voice maintaining its calm tone but with an edge that wasn't there before. Kelly, sensing the shift in energy, tried to soften her approach. I'm not trying to say anything negative, Jason. I'm just curious about your perspective on how you choose your roles and whether you feel like the industry sometimes limits actors based on their physical appearance. So you're asking me if I think I'm just a pretty face who can't act? Momoa's voice was still controlled, but there was definitely tension building. No, that's not what I'm saying at all, Kelly replied quickly, her media training kicking in. I think you're incredibly talented. I'm just asking about the challenges that come with being known for action roles. Momoa leaned forward in his chair, his hands clasped together. Kelly, I've been acting for over 2 decades. I've done everything from television dramas to independent films to major blockbusters. I've worked with some of the most respected directors in the industry. So when you sit here and suggest that I'm just coasting on my looks, that's not just insulting to me, it's insulting to every director who's cast me, every writer who's written for me, and every actor I've worked alongside. The studio audience was dead silent now. The comfortable atmosphere that had filled the room just minutes earlier completely evaporated. Kelly's smile faltered as she realized the interview was taking a turn she hadn't anticipated. Jason, I really didn't mean to imply that you're not a skilled actor, she said, her voice taking on a more defensive tone. I was just trying to have a conversation about the industry and how actors navigate their careers. Navigate my career? Momoa's voice rose slightly. You want to talk about navigating careers? Let's talk about how talk show hosts sometimes think they can psychoanalyze their guests on live television instead of just promoting their projects like they're supposed to. The tension in the room was palpable. Camera operators glanced at each other nervously, and the show's producers could be seen in the background making frantic gestures. Kelly's face flushed as she tried to regain control of the situation. Jason, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to do here. This is a conversation, not an attack on your abilities. A conversation. Momoa's laugh was sharp and humorless. You call questioning my acting credentials a conversation? You know what, Kelly, maybe we should have a real conversation then. Let's talk about how you built your career on a singing competition and then somehow decided that qualified you to critique other people's artistic choices. The audience gasped audibly. Kelly's eyes widened with shock and anger. Excuse me, I've worked incredibly hard to build this show and my career. I don't appreciate you attacking my qualifications, and I don't appreciate you attacking mine, Momoa shot back, his calm demeanor now completely gone. You want to talk about relying on one thing? You've been riding that American Idol wave for 20 years. At least I've expanded beyond my starting point. Kelly's professional composure cracked. That's completely unfair, and you know it. I've had a successful music career. I've done television. I've built this show from the ground up. I work incredibly hard every single day. So do I, Momoa replied, his voice getting louder. But apparently that doesn't matter to you because you've already made up your mind about what kind of actor I am based on what? My appearance. The fact that I'm a big guy who does action movies. I never said anything about your appearance, Kelly protested, but her voice lacked conviction. You didn't have to say it directly. It's implied in every word of your question. You see me and you think, oh, here's the muscle guy who probably can't handle Shakespeare. Well, newsflash, Kelly, I've done Shakespeare. I've done classical theater. I've done indie films that you've probably never even heard of because they don't fit your narrow view of what my career should look like. The show's producer was now standing just off camera, making cutting motions across his throat. But both Kelly and Jason seemed oblivious to everything except their escalating argument. Kelly's voice rose to match his. You're putting words in my mouth, Jason. I asked a legitimate question about typecasting, which is something that affects a lot of actors. You're the one who turned this into a personal attack. Personal attack. Momoa stood up from his chair, his imposing frame now towering over the seated Kelly. You questioned my talent on national television, and you're calling my response a personal attack. You started this, Kelly. You want to play journalist and ask the tough questions. Then you better be prepared for honest answers. Kelly also stood up, her much smaller frame dwarfed by Momoa's presence, but her voice remained strong. Sit down, Jason. You're being completely inappropriate. I'm being inappropriate. Momoa's voice boomed across the studio. You're the one who decided to ambush me with questions about my acting ability instead of just talking about my new project like every other professional host would do. I am a professional host, Kelly snapped back. And part of being professional is asking real questions, not just giving celebrities a platform to promote their projects without any substance. Substance. Momoa's eyes flashed with anger. You want substance? Let's talk about substance. Let's talk about how you've built your entire brand on being the relatable, down-to-earth celebrity. But the moment someone challenges you, you show your true colors. The studio audience was now completely silent, watching this unexpected confrontation unfold like a car crash they couldn't look away from. Some audience members were recording on their phones, despite the show's no recording policy. Kelly's voice trembled slightly with anger. My true colors? At least I'm not the one having a complete meltdown on television because someone asked me about my career. Meltdown. Momoa laughed bitterly. This isn't a meltdown, Kelly. This is me standing up for myself and my work. Something you clearly wouldn't understand since you've spent your entire career being handled by publicists and managers. That's enough, Kelly said, her voice cutting through the tension. I think we need to take a commercial break. No, Momoa said firmly, stepping closer to Kelly's desk. We're not taking a break. You wanted to have this conversation, so let's have it. You want to question my professionalism? Let's talk about your professionalism. Let's talk about how you've ambushed other guests with questions they weren't prepared. For Kelly's face was now red with anger and embarrassment. I have never ambushed anyone. I asked thoughtful questions that my audience wants to hear answered. Thoughtful questions. Momoa's voice dripped with sarcasm. There was nothing thoughtful about what you just did. You took a cheap shot at my acting ability and you're trying to dress it up as journalism. The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. Security guards could be seen moving closer to the stage area, and the show's director was frantically signaling to cut to commercial. But the confrontation continued to escalate with no signs of stopping. The studio had become a powder keg, and both Kelly and Jason seemed determined to light the fuse. Kelly gripped the edge of her desk, her knuckles white with tension. You know what, Jason? Maybe this is exactly why some people question your range as an actor. Because right now, you're showing everyone exactly who you really are when the cameras are rolling and you can't hide behind a script. Momoa's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists at his sides. And you're showing everyone what happens when a talk show host gets called out for being unprofessional. You can't handle it when someone doesn't just sit there and take your passive-aggressive questions. Passive-aggressive. Kelly's voice cracked with indignation. There was nothing passive about my question. I was direct and honest, which is more than I can say for your reaction. Direct and honest. Momoa took another step closer to Kelly's desk. You want direct and honest? Fine. You're a mediocre interviewer who thinks asking controversial questions makes you some kind of hard-hitting journalist, but all you're really doing is trying to create drama for ratings. The audience was now visibly uncomfortable, some people shifting in their seats, others whispering to each other. The energy in the room had shifted from excitement to genuine concern. Kelly's voice shook with anger. How dare you call me mediocre? I've interviewed hundreds of guests, and none of them have ever reacted like this. Maybe the problem isn't with my interviewing skills. Maybe the problem is with you. The problem is with me. Momoa's voice rose to almost a shout. The problem is that you thought you could take a cheap shot at my career and I would just sit there and smile for your cameras. Well, I'm not going to do that, Kelly. I'm not going to pretend this is okay. Then maybe you should leave, Kelly said, her voice cold and final. Maybe I should, Momoa replied, his voice matching her icy tone. But I'm not going to let you have the last word on this. You want to question my professionalism? Let's talk about how professional it is to blindside your guests with questions designed to make them look bad. Two security guards had now positioned themselves at the edge of the stage, clearly ready to intervene if necessary. The show's producer was frantically trying to get Kelly's attention, but she was too focused on the confrontation to notice. Kelly pointed toward the exit. I think this interview is over. Jason, I'm asking you to leave. I'm not done talking, Momoa said, his voice defiant. You started this conversation, and I'm going to finish it. You want to know about my acting range? Here's some range for you. I can go from respectful guest to someone who's not going to tolerate your disrespect in about 30 seconds. Security, Kelly called out, her voice carrying across the studio. I need security up here, now. The two guards immediately moved toward the stage, but Momoa held up his hands. I'm not threatening anyone here. I'm just defending myself against someone who thinks she can attack my career on national television. Kelly's voice was now shaking with both anger and adrenaline. You're making a scene, Jason. You're embarrassing yourself and everyone involved in this show. I'm embarrassing myself. Momoa laughed harshly. You're the one who turned what should have been a simple interview into an interrogation. You're the one who decided to question my abilities instead of just doing your job. The first security guard reached the stage area. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down and step back from the desk. Momoa turned to face the security guard, his imposing presence even more intimidating up close. I'm perfectly calm. I'm just having a conversation with Kelly here about professional courtesy. Jason, please, Kelly said, her voice now carrying a note of pleading. Just leave. This has gone too far. It went too far the moment you decided to ambush me with your questions, Momoa replied, but he took a step back from the desk. You want me to leave? Fine, but everyone watching this is going to see exactly what kind of host you really are. The second security guard had now joined his colleague, both men positioned between Momoa and Kelly. Sir, we're going to need you to come with us. Momoa looked at the guards, then back at Kelly, his expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. This is really how you want to handle this. You attack my career and then have me escorted out when I defend myself. Kelly's voice was firm, despite the tremor in it. You're the one who escalated this situation. All I did was ask a question. All you did was try to humiliate me on television, Momoa shot back as one of the security guards gently took his arm. But you know what, Kelly? The people watching this are going to see right through what you tried to do here. As the guards began to escort him toward the exit, Momoa turned back one final time. You want to know about professionalism? A professional host would have apologized by now. But I guess that's not in your playbook. Kelly stood behind her desk, her chest rising and falling rapidly, watching as Jason Momoa was led away from the stage. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. We'll be right back after this commercial break, Kelly managed to say into the camera, her voice barely steady. As the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The confrontation that had started with a simple question about typecasting had exploded into one of the most dramatic moments in daytime television history. So there you have it, the explosive confrontation that had everyone talking. What do you think went too far first, Kelly's questioning or Jason's reaction? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.